What's up, everybody? This is Jimmy with Trading Decoded. It is January 15th, 2025, and it's 3:21 in the afternoon. I done for the day, picked up my kids, and today was a report day, and those reports made the market very happy. These are not my favorite days to play because, well, I just don't like gigantic moves in pre-market. They feel artificial, and when I feel like something is artificial, it just makes it that much more difficult for me to be comfortable trading. Now, I did find a trade to take this morning, and it was puts for a reason. Didn't expect it to be a sustainable move down. In fact, we talked about it in the morning. People were asking me, Jimmy, did you think that the move, we were going to close the gap today? I said, there's no chance that I would buy puts here expecting that to happen. I'm going to basically play what I play as a counter trend trade. And I'm only picking that because we're putting in lower highs leading into the open, which you'll see. But long story short, this trade was slightly uncomfortable. It stayed in it because the Qs got me in and the Qs kept me in. This is something that I need to reiterate because I'm going to show you a trade today that we found that was to the upside, that we got into because the Qs said it was okay. We stayed in it because the Qs said it was okay, even though SPY was pulling back an amount that seemed uncomfortable. But then the trade ended up working out exactly how we hoped it would, all guided by the Qs. And that's what kept me in this morning's trade. So you guys, if you want to watch the live trade, go ahead and check it out in this link right up here. And you can watch that. If you want to watch both, well, thanks for watching both. I appreciate you. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the charts and take a look at what we got going on. Okay, so as you can see here, leading right up until 8:30 this morning when the reports came out, that came in cooler as expected, by the way, we got a $6.50 move to the upside. Now, these, I don't like these. I don't like these, and it's not because I have a problem with the market going up. It's just because I don't like big, gigantic moves. I don't know if it's got to correct itself and then get back into normal reality and start doing normal things after that. I don't know if taking profit is going to be a thing right at the open. I don't know. And in fact, nobody knows, right? So what I'm looking for is a justification to do what I do. Just like any other day, I try to ignore what happened, 30 minutes before the market opened, but you can't unsee it, right? So admittedly, going into this, I tried to follow rules. I tried to follow the same reasoning that I apply for every single trade that I take every single morning. And that was our call put scenario. We had a put line at 512.99 on the Qs. We had a put line below 590.02 on SPY. And what the hope was is if we can get below those lines, we would run down to the next support below. That's an 80-cent move. I would like to take advantage of an 80-cent move if possible. And so I'm going to play it. Now, why was I ready for puts? Because we were pulling back into the open. By no means did I know or believe that it was just going to fall out of the sky. I'm looking for quick moves, guys. So I'm limiting. I'm trying to take advantage of small moves with a little bit larger position. Okay, when I say larger, I try to trade five. I trade 5 SPX contracts at a time. And with small moves, when they work in my favor, it allows me to make money that allows me to pay my bills. Okay, so I trade position size to reduce my time in the market, because to me, time in the market, unless you're a long-term investor, is the risk. That is day trading, right? The more time you spend in the market, the more trades you take per day, the higher your odds increase of taking a ding or taking a hit or a loss. I like to be one and done. I like my work days to be short, and therefore I am doing everything I can to make that the case. All right, so Qs started to push low here, and when the Qs closed or close to it, I jumped into puts. You'll hear it if you watch the live video. I announce it, and admittedly, I feel like I made a mistake at first because Qs got in and they pushed all the way down and almost touched support. Now, my hope was that the same thing would happen and we would come down and hit support again. As you could see, we got close. This trade felt really good for a brief moment, and then it didn't. Now, as you will hear in the live trade, my reasoning for staying in was if the Qs stay below this double top right here, okay, I'm still of the belief that we're going to move down to where I hoped we would. Okay, so as you could see, even though SPY started to pull up, it did hit our call line, which we never crossed with the Qs at the same time, by the way. And I stayed in it uncomfortably. I was down a good amount at that point. Plus ADD at the time was printing big green candles. The market was extremely green today, guys. Everything. It's still very green. It's even more green now than it was when we opened. The market's happy. Okay, I was very aware of that. I was looking for a quick move. That quick move ended up taking a little bit longer than I hoped, but it ended up working. And thankfully, I got to get out of that trade with a little over an 8% win, and I was done. But long story short, we were at resistance on Qs, staying below resistance on the Qs. Now I wait for candle closes, as you'll hear if you listen. I want to see candle closes for me to get out. If we would have closed up here, that would have been a painful loss. Okay, it held resistance here on Qs, it held resistance on SPY, and finally, ADD started to give me a little bit of hope by printing a couple of red candles. During that move of red candles coming down, it allowed us to get down, and you'll hear if you listen, I ended up getting stopped out of this trade somewhere near the bottom of this candle, which allowed me to get out, thankfully, with some profit. Now, to the upside, after I was already done here. And let me say something else about ADD, because this is a perfect example. Guys, ADD opened the highest I've seen it in a very, very long time. And what's crazy about this is that there's not much higher that ADD can go. This just means that basically every stock in the stock market is trading above the price that it closed at yesterday. When you're pushing 2,400 on ADD, anything north of 2,000 is a very, very green market. And it can't go much higher. So the only thing that ADD can do in a situation like this is either move sideways, which would tell you that the market is not taking profits, or it starts to sell off, which it started to do shortly after the open. Does that mean we jump into puts? Absolutely not. It does not mean we jump into puts. It means that, hey, there is some profit taking place out there in the market. It's happening at a slow but steady pace. So wait till Qs and SPY start to roll over before you start considering puts. However, the next trade we were looking for was the call scenario. Both charts at the same time were breaching that line at 942. It was also coming off of a higher low, so we're expecting that to move up to the next resistance. If it gets through these resistances, we're expecting them to go up to the next resistance after that, and everything kept going. Everything kept going. The market was very green, and we pushed all the way up to even a resistance that existed in pre-market on the Qs, okay? We pull back. Now, this is a spot where I would not have taken calls, even though we recognized before we got there where the pullback to support would need to be if we were going to take calls. Why did I not take calls? Because we put in two lower highs on the way down to this support right here. That kept me out of calls. However, we did not put in, I guess we did put in a lower high right here on SPY. So that's why I didn't take it. However, if you ever want to know if the market likes support levels, or if you ever want to consider buying calls on a pullback during a very green day, just look to where those levels are on both Qs and SPY. And if you want to take the leap of faith, take the leap of faith. Make sure at the time of the pullback, when you hit that support level, ADD is printing green at that time. It was in this case, which is right here. Okay, yes, I know ADD is trending down. I'm talking about green candles, right? Because we want to know at that moment if momentum is in our favor, okay? So you've got the support of the Qs hitting right here. You've got support of SPY hitting right here. ADD is green. Let's see if we can hold it. And the first target you're looking for is the resistance it just came from. That all happened. Okay. Now, the other thing that I told everybody was I wouldn't feel comfortable getting into calls until the Qs are able to clear this double line of resistance right here. Okay. If the Qs can get above that line, then I would feel comfortable enough to take calls, and I'd be hoping that they would make their way up to the next line up at 516.50, which is more than $1 move. Okay. So as we move up, you see there's no arrow here because I wouldn't have done that, but we talked about it just so you know. We close over the line. Now, this is the trade I was talking about before, guys, where if you take your entries on the Qs, you have to take your exits from the Qs. What you don't want to do is get into a trade because of the Qs and get out of a trade because of SPY. You have to stick to the same chart. If you get in because of SPY, you get out because of SPY. All right. If you get in because of Qs, you stay in because of Qs until the Qs tells you to get out. So with a close above this double line, ultimately we're looking for a move to continue up to the next line of resistance, whether it's the 50 cent or the halfway mark or the all the way mark. But I was being asked, Jimmy, where would you stop yourself out of this trade if you were in it? And I said, as long as we stay above these lines of what was resistance, keeping them as support, I would stay in this trade and wait for a candle close below. Now, of course, they're asking because we are getting into this trade right here on SPY. And as SPY is pulling back, you're thinking, man, this does not feel good. You had the support of a trend line. You had the support of this halfway point. Okay. You had the support of Qs. I understand. It's very difficult to hold through that when you're looking at your P&L. But again, as I said before, I get in because of the Qs. I stay in because of the Qs. If the Qs tell me I have to get out, I get out. Qs held, and then they ultimately pushed right up to where we wanted to go, which coincided very closely with SPY's next target up as well. So that ended up being very similar to this one, but in the opposite direction. I bought puts here because the Qs closed below a support line or were breaching support, and I wanted them to come down to the next support. I stayed in because the Qs never breached resistance or closed above resistance, and fortunately that trade worked out for me. It's the same thing, but in the opposite direction. You got in because of the Qs closing above resistance. You got out because it met the next resistance. It never closed below the support that we needed it to stay above. Okay. Then we start moving down. We put in lower highs. We recognize the lower highs. We're looking for our next support left. And if we get through that support, we're looking for the move down to this first support below it. If we get below that, we're looking to this one here. Okay. If we get below that, we're looking for this one here. So on and so forth. So as we pull back, we are putting in lower highs. We're likely to break support. Some people get in a little aggressively. We get below that support. We get into our trade. We move down. We get to this line here where you could have taken your profit, but the reason there's no circle there is because I told everybody Q still has a little more room to go before they get to their next support. Let's see if we can hang on a little bit longer and hope that it comes down. It did on both charts, and you got to squeeze a little bit more out of it. But even if you didn't get a little bit more out of it, if you got in because we broke the support in the first place, you still made a decent profit on that move. Then we pull back, still lower highs, and I was explaining to somebody what a wedge is and how we don't like to buy into trades while we're in a wedge, right? And the reason for that is because, well, we don't know who's going to win the fight. When you're in a wedge, you're putting in lower highs and higher lows. That's why you have this little triangle area here. Now, should you jump into a position just because the wedge breaks high or wedge breaks low? Well, the answer is it kind of depends. It depends on multiple things. Number one, if we break high, is there room to move before you hit your next resistance? If the answer is no, then you have to wait. Okay, if we break low, should you jump into puts? Again, it depends. If there is no support for a little ways down before you get into those, or before you from where you're getting in to where you want it to go, well, then you can take it, right? There's just got to be room. That's all. There's got to be room. And we were staying below the original trend line. So we did have people inputs here that held through this wedge too, which is okay. You just don't buy a new position until you're out of the wedge. If you're holding on to one, that red trend line right there is the reason you stay in, right? If we close above it, you get out. Or if we hit a profit target that you're happy with, you get out. And that's exactly what happened here for some, and the wedge was for others. So we closed outside of the wedge for the first time right here at 1044. We stayed on that little support line. We breached support, which was that dotted line. We were hoping for at least a move down to here, which you got in the very first candle. We got to close below that, but more importantly, the Qs still had more room to go, as you could see here. And then the Qs made it down to their support at 1048, which would have kept you in this trade, and then the Qs tried to push lower. Ultimately, SPY got to a support while Qs were at support. Now, these are counter trend trades because of how green the day was, so we weren't looking to hold these trades for a long time. And then there's no more arrows on this chart, but I do want to bring one other thing to your attention because we were talking about this as well. What we were looking for here, we were in a channel. So we had found a support and we created a nice resistance that was holding like a brick wall on both charts. Okay. But on Qs, we were kind of putting in lower highs. This ended up turning into a very ugly wedge that typically breaks low. The problem was it wasn't breaking each time that we'd hit it. Right. So what you're looking at here is several opportunities, because we talked about it, where you were hitting resistance and you're hoping to get down to support. Resistance to support, lower high. Now we expect support to fail and get down to the next support. It did that. That's this guy right here. Okay, we got down there. It runs right back up to that resistance. I wouldn't have bought here because I would have been worried about this size of this green candle, thinking it's going to continue up. But some people don't care about that. I do. We cannot ignore that ADD at this point also started to dump more aggressively, and Qs was at resistance as well. So my word to you of advice is, if you're going to buy pullbacks, absolutely wait to a line of support or resistance, in this case resistance, because if you buy here, not only will you get an excellent fill, but you'll also have a really, really tight stop line, right? We know we've had a zero success rate about closing above this line up here. So if we do, you have to assume it's going to run up to the next resistance. That's got to be your stopping point. So you are more than welcome to take the risk. Like I said, ADD was trending down basically since 15 minutes after the open the whole time. And we were hoping that we were going to come down. It ultimately did, and it broke supports, and we got a nice move to the downside. What we were really hoping for it to do was the Qs to come all the way down to this alert that you see set. So the Qs kept closing below supports, lower, lower, lower. And then we got our first higher low right here. But not only that, and I had mentioned this while we were on our way down, I was like, man, I really hope we can get down to 511.88 on the Qs, because that would drag SPY down probably closer to this level. But higher lows and ADD stopped moving down. ADD started to rotate up. And I had mentioned that right around 1157, 1158, right before I got off the mic. I said, guys, I really hope the Qs come down, but I don't like what ADD is doing. And as you can see, ADD started to make a nice recovery back to the north, up to the upside, okay? Back into that 2000 range. And as a result, Qs and SPY started to rotate back up and make their way up all the way to and ultimately through the last line at the top that I had for both these charts. So we're kind of just hanging out up here, but I'm long gone at this point. So there's nothing else to trade in my opinion. And but that's pretty much it. All right. So that was it in a nutshell. There was much cleaner, much nicer moves a little bit later in the day. Up was the play of the day. We got to catch some counter trend trades. We waited for the right reasons to get them. Yeah, some of your longer term portfolios probably took a nice breather today too, because, well, everything's extremely green. ADD is back to pulling back again. I wouldn't be buying calls on these support levels because we're putting in lower highs on Qs and SPY. So just a heads up, and it's way too late in the day. But that's it. So if you guys got any useful information in this video, please like, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to join our Discord community, well, we'd love to have you, and it would be amazing to see you. Also, I'm hoping the book will be available starting tomorrow on Amazon. If not, hopefully the next day. It really depends on how long it takes for Amazon to okay the release of the book. It's already uploaded. It's ready to go. We just need them to say, you're good. So that's that. And as always, thank you guys for everything. Thank you for your support. Thank you for watching these videos. And I hope you're still getting some useful information out of them. Until tomorrow, I love you guys. See ya!